Hey guys, it's Jeremie Kale, and um, when we when we wrapped up my last segment of my testimony, we were talking about how I had just entered into that stage of my life where things really started to snowball downhill quickly in a detrimental fashion. I began making those decisions after I intentionally turned away from God that were really, really harmful. And so this segment of my testimony that I'm about to share with you is what a lot of people would consider my actual testimony. And I just got to say something at the forefront of this. The things I did, I'm not proud of. There are so many decisions that I made over the course of my life, and I still make today decisions that I wish I could go back and change, but so many decisions that I would make differently if I could go back and do it again. But the truth of the matter is I can't. And God has given me this testimony, and I'm going to use it to His glory. But I want to say that a lot of times in the church, those faithful believers who have believed from a young age and had a true faith oftentimes can feel ashamed that they or feel like they don't have a good testimony because they haven't made all these bad decisions like people like me have. And I'm here to tell you that that is not the case. You have the better testimony. If you've never been the typical quote unquote rebel and done all these things and made all these decisions and done the typical rebellious things, you have the testimony I wish I could have. I envy you in a lot of ways because every decision comes with baggage. So at the forefront, I just want to say that I'm not proud of my testimony. This is simply the facts. And so, with all that being said, once I turned away from the Lord, I immediately began seeking to fill that God-sized hole in my heart with everything that I could throw at it. I was smoking 2 packs a day. I began to drink more heavily. I began to party harder. I really let my grades slip. Didn't care about school. And I began to throw myself into sexual encounters as much as I could. And I won't go into too much detail with that, except that you need to know that I pursued pleasure as hard as I could. And over the course of the next couple of years, I found out that I was pretty sick with 7 different kinds. The doctor said it was, I think, 7 different kinds of toxic mold in my system. And there were a few other people that were affected by this too. It came from a place we worked. And anyway, the doctor told me, long story short, the doctors essentially told me that I could have any form of cancer known to man by the age of 21. And that I'd probably die. And that was hard to hear. But it really put me on this track of not caring even more. And I thought I just had to just live life to the fullest, or what I thought was the fullest. I was on, I think it was 22 medications that I was supposed to be taking daily, but of course, since I wasn't handling my finances right, I couldn't afford them all the time. So it was a hit or miss thing of me getting my meds. And most of my money went to alcohol and cigarettes and gasoline, to get to and from work. And that's where my priorities were. It was just really just party and make myself feel good however I could. And then one year, I can't remember the exact year, I think it was 2011. I moved in with one of my best friends, and it just turned into a party year. I was coming off a hard breakup, and I just, everything was just hitting rock bottom for me. And I was realizing at that point that my years of bad decision making weren't fulfilling me, and I was going to have to be even more extreme and do even more hardcore things to fulfill this pleasure void in my life. And so I began pursuing men as well as women sexually. And for a long time there, I was bisexual. And drinking constantly, smoking constantly. Again, it was ultimately just doing anything I could that I thought would make me feel good. But this year I was drunk so much of the time. I got so depressed because nothing was fulfilling me. There were 3 times that I can consciously remember, and I don't know if there were more times than that or not, but there were 3 times that I can consciously remember fully intending to end my life. I was that depressed. I was just suicidal. I was just going to end it. But God in His grace had people around me who kept me safe. There were multiple instances where I was stopped by my best friend before I could follow through with a suicide attempt, usually involving a motorcycle. And then there was one time where I was riding home on my motorcycle from a side job that I had taken, painting a house. And I was coming up to this bend in the road. It was literally a 90-degree curve, and it was kind of on an uphill, a right-hand curve. And there were woods in the distance. And I just remember deciding this was it. I was just going to end it at this point. Now, I've been riding bikes for a while, and I'm not an idiot. I know how to put a bike down. And so I was in 5th gear. I dropped it a gear, and I just laid on the hammer. And I remember looking at the odometer coming into that curve, and it's saying 97 miles an hour. I threw the motorcycle down to the right as hard as I could, fully intending for it to flip me over the backside of it and to kill myself. Well, I slid for 30 feet or more on pavement. My leg never once touched the ground, and the bike didn't flip. The bike hit the grass at the edge of the road, and immediately I slid out from under it. At that point, my leg hit the ground. And as soon as I was clear of the bike, it flipped. It started to flip. My bike was totaled, and I walked away without a scratch. And I remember cursing God that day. I was so mad at Him. And in the course of all this, I met this guy at work. His name's Wade Foster, and he's awesome. God really brought him into my life for a reason. God worked in his life, and God worked in my life through our relationship. And over the years that I was really in the depth of my hardest years of rebellion, God used his relationship with me to bring me back around to a saving knowledge of Jesus Christ. And through a hilarious set of circumstances, I volunteered to run sound at his church up in Stanley. And so every Sunday for months before I got saved, in the depths of my rebellion, in the depths of my sin, I would wake up hungover, who knows where I was, on Sunday mornings, and I would drive in usually a still intoxicated state all the way up to Stanley, North Carolina, which was about 30 or 40 minutes from my apartment. And I would sit in the back and run sound at this church. And I just remember being overcome by the love of these people. They didn't care that I reeked of cigarettes and sin. They all complimented me on how well the sound had gone that day, and just loved having me there. And they were the most genuine Christians, genuine people I've ever met. And that was pretty incredible, and that was the beginning of the turning point for me. So we'll talk about that day that I finally got saved in the next segment, but that period in my life where I was in the depths of my sin was truly one of the darkest parts of my life. I wish I could go back and change it all, but I can't. And I just want to encourage you that take it from me. The sin is fun for a while, but it catches up. It really does, and you're going to drag baggage into any relationship you go into because of these decisions that you've made in your past. You're going to have to answer for it. It's not worth it. It's so not worth it. Anyway, that was that portion of my life and my testimony, and I hope that you guys can learn some of the lessons that I had to learn the hard way through what I went through. Anyway, God bless you guys.